The sun gleamed through my window when it had risen high enough, and it caused me to blink myself awake. I could feel that my eyes were puffy and swollen from last night, so I was careful not to rub them often. I let out a sigh and laid still, and I just stared at the ceiling for what seemed like hours. I wasn't in my comfort zone at all, nor was I in a place I could feel myself in. A light set of knocks came on the door, and I jumped from the sudden interruption.
Who is it?
I asked cautiously.
Good morning, Miss Sophitia.
A woman's voice called through the door, and she slowly opened it.
May I come in?
I just groaned and slapped a pillow over my face to block the sunlight.
What do you need?
I'm Terry, the head maid around the mansion. I'm here to help you prepare for breakfast.
She said with a bubbly tone. I removed the pillow from my face and turned to look at her as she walked into the room. She was very tall and slender, for a woman. Gray blonde hair was braided down her side, and her eyes sparkled the brightest green I had ever seen.
Why are you so cheery?
I asked.
Master Reaver takes some getting used to, trust me. But his attitude doesn't affect me much anymore.
Easier said than done, I'm afraid. That man knows how to push me to my limit.
I said harshly.
Sounds like it goes a little deeper than that, Miss Sophie.
She smiled warmly.
If it's not too bold.
I think it is, for my taste anyway.
I sighed and looked over to the window. She had been right, but it really didn't matter much anymore. There had been a sudden noise in the hallway that was followed by a series of barks and yips. My spirits lightened and I shot up from the bed and went straight to the door.
Did Master Reaver get a dog?
Terry wondered.
Baron!
I shouted happily, and I threw the door open. Then, the husky dog burst through, and attacked me with sloppy kisses.
I've missed you. Are you alright? They didn't hurt you, did they?
I hugged him tightly and breathed in the familiar scent of his fur. I sat on the floor for a long while, and comforted my friend in the new environment, until he settled down.
There must be something special about you, Miss Sophie.
Terry suddenly chimed in. I looked up at her with a questioning gaze.
What? Don't be silly. I highly doubt.
I'm just saying.
She held her hands up.
None of the other staff are allowed to bring an animal here on account of Reaver's hatred towards them. He'll shoot anything, including pets.
That doesn't mean anything,
I said.
What about the way you talked to him the other day? I also heard what you did to him.
She began to laugh.
It was priceless. I wish I could have been there to see it myself.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
Just take this as a compliment, hun. After all you did to him, he let you live. That has to count for something.
Thanks, Terry.
I said with a smile. The woman bowed her head to me, and left the room without another word.
Sit, boy. I'll get you some jerky from my bag.
I told Farron, as he looked up at me. He then sat down obediently and waited for his treat.
I guess it's time to go and face the man of my nightmares.
The husky looked up at me and wagged his tail, which told me he understood. I was already seated at the table, but out of kindness and warning, I didn't touch my food until he had arrived at the table.
Well, good morning, little sparrow,
he said mockingly, once he entered the room.
So, how are you enjoying my home? Rather lovely, isn't it?
Yes, Reaver.
I began to eat my food silently. He looked at me with a disapproving glare.
Normally you have a snappy comeback. Is anything wrong?
Not at all, Reaver. Just enjoying the food.
Does my company not satisfy you? Would you rather dine with your mud?
He said sharply.
If you wish me to, I will.
I said. I was going to try my hardest not to let him get to me as easily as he did before, because I knew he craved it.
Sophie, after your work, I need to speak with you in my quarters. Finish your food and then you are excused.
I silently finished the rest of my meal and excused myself from the table. And I didn't look at him once, as I exited the room. When I got to my chambers, my outfit had been placed on my bed for me, so I just sighed and changed into it right away. It definitely showed off a little more of my legs than I normally liked, but if I were to argue, well, I just didn't want to deal with another argument or I'd become another human practicing target for his dragon stomper. Oliver had opened the door to Reaver's library, which is where I had been cleaning up.
Hello, Sophie. Reaver would like to see you now.
He said happily when he saw me. I greeted him with a smile while I set the broom and dustpan into the nearest corner.
Hey, Oliver. I just finished up anyway, so it's good timing.
I gave him a nod.
I'd be more than happy to escort you to his quarters, miss.
Thank you.
I said happily. I stood up from my crouching position and wiped off my dust-covered uniform.
Shall we go then?
Yes, and Sophie? I have a bit of odd news that no one else knows. When I went to check on Master Reaver, he was asleep and...
He paused.
Yes, what then?
I asked.
He was calling out to you in his sleep. I'm sorry to bring it up, but I thought it was noteworthy.
He gave me a look.
Thank you, Oliver, for bringing it to my attention.
I shook off the possibilities that swam in my head and continued to walk alongside the young boy. We had arrived outside of the room, so Oliver knocked heavily on the door to grab his attention.
What?
Reaver called.
Miss Sophie for you, sir.
Oliver said.
Let her in.
I entered his room with caution, but I didn't think he would intimidate me too much.
Well, here I am.
I said. He stood by his window wearing another white poet's shirt. It was wrinkled and unkempt. His shirt wasn't neatly tucked in, and he wore no shoes. He looked rather disheveled.
What did you need to talk about?
I said abruptly, then crossed my arms to show my unease. He looked at me without a word for another moment, and sighed.
Do you know why I asked for your presence?
Because I did something wrong? I really don't know.
No, you've done nothing wrong, my dear.
He said with a sudden smile. Then he began to walk closer to me, and began to circle me.
I truly do enjoy you in my employ once again, dear Sophitia.
Reaver, you're beginning to worry me.
I said. He suddenly got close to me, a few inches away, his lips dangerously close to mine. His hand made its way to my exposed thigh and he gently caressed my skin. His touch had sent a burst of energy throughout my entire body within seconds, and my skin began to tingle. The sudden shock had caught me off guard, and I was rendered speechless. I wanted him to stop, but the words couldn't form, and I just couldn't speak.
Reaver.
Was all I could manage.
Shh, no need for words, mon chéri. Besides, I've been wanting this for a very long time.
His lips made it to my neck and trailed down to my neck. I had let a quiet moan slip on accident, but I didn't want to let him know that I would rather enjoy feeling his hands on me, and I finally came to my senses. The strong smell of alcohol lingered over him.
Reaver!
I yelled. Then I pushed him away from me.
What in Scorm's name do you think you're doing?
Keep it down. No need for shouting. I was merely admiring your beauty and voluptuous curves.
He smirked.
I demand to leave this horrible place. I'll find a new bloody house. I don't care. I just want out.
Why? I've been more than generous with you, Sophie.
He began to get irritated.
You just tried to have your way with me. Is that generous? I don't even know why I admitted to myself that I care for you. This is the biggest mistake of my life.
I turned to the door and ran out of the room in a hot anger. Then I slammed it behind me. I ran past Oliver with hot tears streaming down my face, and he suddenly stopped me. Worry clouded his eyes.
Miss Sophie? What happened?
I couldn't even start to describe what had happened, and I broke down on his shoulders, so he took me into an embrace.
Terry!
Terry ran up and noticed me right away, so she quickly guided me to my room as she helped me catch my breath.
Oh, Terry.
I began.
Shh. Hush now. We'll talk in your room, hun.
She cooed. Her arms held onto me and supported my weight as she opened the door and led me in. She gently sat me on the bed and waited for me to calm down, but I just stared at the floor while tears still flowed. She pulled a chair up next to where I sat, and waited another long moment, then she gently placed a hand on my back.
Now, calm down and tell me about what happened.